Do you want to do like this actual episode now, or
Sorry, what was that?
so? Are we doing like like the episode now, or like
Yeah,
what
we can do
exactly
the
is the
episode
record?
now. If you
Sure.
look at any of
Okay.
my other ones, they're very, very casual. There's no real
Okay.
structure. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. Sure.
Uh, so today I think it's Guestroom 15 or 16, and we've got none other than Roman Hipp. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Roman hip. Yeah. It's perfectly
Roman
fine.
Hipp. Nice and easy. And we're going to be talking about everything. Really, we're just going to be learning about him and his story and better contact, but also getting some of his insights on the calling space and just the mobile data space in general. I think you'd have a lot of nuggets for everyone. So yeah, I'm just going to give it to you. How did you get started with this? So you're telling me you started it right after university?
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. As I already said at the beginning of the call, right? Very much appreciate this community building. So before we start, thanks a lot for that. But yeah, exactly. So I performed better contact in my last year of university, actually, in my bachelor's. So yeah, it's been like 2.5 years now, close to 3 years. And yeah, basically emerged from this typical story that you had a pain, right? You had this like a broken workflow, right? I was working like internships both at like a startup and also like a corporate, always needing to enrich a list, right? So of course, very much less advanced than what like you guys are doing, right? GTM engineers, it was just like uploading CSV files and all of that. And then pulling it out again, putting it in the next tool, right? So this was already the issue. It was very time intensive. I needed to go to a lot of different tools, needed to ask finance for a new subscription, right? Because the databases, they were always complementary, right? Like one found what the other didn't find. So yeah, ultimately, then when I met my co-founder, right? Like now co-founder, he already had like some type of a prototype because he's a software engineer, right? I'm more on the non-technical side, and he basically then yeah already had this for himself. And then I said we need to bring this to the market, right? Because I saw it firsthand how big of a pain it is to having to go to different email databases, phone databases to yeah basically enrich your list, right? And this is where this like waterfall enrichment idea basically emerged from.
Okay. Um, and like, how different does the product look now to what it was at the very beginning? Well, like, what was the core MVP at the beginning?
Yeah, so the core MVP was actually pretty similar to Clay these days, is that you were able to put your API key in, right? And then you were able to change the provider order. We had like, I think, 4 or 5 providers. So we didn't have the partnerships with them that we have now, right? You were just able to use your own API key. We didn't resell anything. So it was just like a platform, right? It wasn't really like a
Okay.
data provider per se. So yeah, of course, now it's like intelligent waterfall. This is how we call it. Basically, knowing based on a lot of data, right? We have big volumes working with very high volume clients that ultimately we know which provider is the best for this industry, for this country, right? So we are now able to um, maximize the results. And we always say we're like the aggregate of the market capabilities, check what's out there, and then we're able to identify what the best data point is based on like validation layers, like waterfall validation. I think that's also something that many aren't using yet, right? Because of course, just like enrichment, validation also is complementary in a way. So yeah, this is basically like how it works now, right? We're like a data provider. We basically resell the data that we buy from the providers, like as you all know them, right? Like a Hunter or like a
Hmm.
Rocket Reach. So yeah.
Okay, cool. And like, I haven't done any large scale tests on it yet. I am planning on doing it in late Q2. But Better Contact generally comes out on top when it comes to mobile data in the EU, especially
Yeah.
when you're looking for mobile data. Is that just because you've got, you probably don't have a solid answer for this, but do you think that's because you're just aggregating all these different sources and naturally it's going to be one of the top providers? Or is it because you're being very selective about the tools you choose, or is there some other kind of magic behind it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing always is the coverage, right? And the other one is the quality. And I mean, having a good coverage is not really like the hardest thing, right? Because as you already said, you can just like chain these different tools together and then you find like yeah, basically all of the mobile numbers or emails the market has to offer, right? Like the
Mhm.
hard thing is really about deep validation, being able to tell which email or phone is actually like the best one the market has to offer right now, right? So yeah, I mean, as we also like a European company ourselves, right, which is also something I would say bit of a unique position because most of the other ones are like based in the US or like Hong Kong or something. We're also very much focused on the European phone numbers, right? Of course, like half, like actually more than half of our customers are US, right? So this is also like I would say a split of attention between US and Europe. But yeah, we also do quite some heavy investment on the European side of the mobile verification.
Okay, cool. One question I had actually recently, um, maybe you can help me out with it. When you find mobile data, is there any way to distinguish between a business number and a personal number?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, this is like one of the, I would say, tough nuts still to crack by the validation providers, right? Because we, of course, are an aggregator in a way, so we don't build our own proprietary technology on the enrichment or validation side.
Hmm.
So as of now, I mean, there is a lot of deep validation possible, right? Like name matching, also location matching. But I mean, this distinction isn't really something that's possible to do, right? And this is why we're also very much putting emphasis on working with providers where we, based on our testing, see that it's like the business, like personal number, right? Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so what are the goals of BetterContact for 2026? Is it purely revenue? Are you adding more features, improving current ones?
Yeah, so what we're planning to push, of course, like the big goal is to keep maximizing on the email and phone front, right? There's still quite some more upside in the algorithm and all of that. But what we're also planning to push is like our list builder, right? Adding more like AI native features in it, right? Like being able to prompt it, right? Which is like a pretty big, I would say,
Hmm.
next step of list building, right? This like Vibe GTM part, being able to actually talk to like a chat-based interface, being able to communicate like that, right? Because as Claude Code and all of this becomes more popular, people aren't really willing anymore to go into like a poll or something like that, put in the filters, right? It takes a lot of time. People want to like work more quickly with the chat. So yeah, this is like something we are pushing.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. The one critique I would have would be that with Claude Code, it's less technical once you have it built. Until it's built, it's way more technical. Um, so I wouldn't so much say that it's you need it to be able to compete with Cloud Code. I'd say it's actually better to have it more intuitive and even more rigid in a way, because it means that there's a lower barrier to entry for people who just need a good list fast, as
Yeah,
opposed to
for
people who are
sure.
building big internal systems.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 100%. So, I mean, we also don't plan to like base our like chat-based interface on Claude Code, on the Claude Code interface, right? We just want to offer people to put in our UI something like, I want to find nurses in, I don't know, the US, which have like a very specific thing, right? And then being
Hmm.
able to identify what that is, and then yeah, also of course we will always keep offering the filters like we currently have, right? But I think it's something that the market is like asking for.
Okay, cool. And I feel like in the outbound space particularly, I've been more of a cold email guy for ages now. But I feel like even the big cold email agencies who've been starting to make a bit of a move, they're still doing email, but they're investing a whole lot more into calling of some kind, be it warm
Mhm.
calling or cold calling. Have you seen that shift as well, or is it just because I'm in a bit of a bubble?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm also a bit in the bubble, right? I mean, obviously, but yeah, we've definitely seen it, right? Not only the companies that have done a bit of cold calling, like especially the agencies are increasing their volumes, right? But we see more and more agencies that are entering the cold calling space, right? Um, primarily still for warm calling, right? As you said, like when there's like a
Hmm.
positive email reply, this is something that we are now seeing heavily. I think it's more like a validation of cold calling before like really investing heavily into a cold calling team, right? Seeing if it works in the first place. But I think looking more like in the next like 3 6 month period, there is definitely like a bigger increase in like cold calling agencies because yeah, especially I don't know why, like in the German market. I mean, I'm also German myself, right? There's a pretty big cold calling increase, not only on the agency side, but also on like the corporate side, right? Like lots of companies are hiring aggressively for cold callers, and more people are also being more receptive to cold calls, right? Like the people that pick up, they don't hang up, or they don't threaten to like sue you, right? So it's like an interesting shift. So yeah, it's definitely something we're quite significantly seeing an increase in.
I think it's interesting that the increase in companies hiring for cold callers, because I feel like it's a mix of a lot of things. But another aspect of it that I think doesn't get talked about enough is that I feel like the traditional BDR function is kind of turning into much closer of like a calling function. There's a lot less emailing and kind of
Yeah, for
manual
sure.
text-based sequencing that needs to happen now at an individual level. So I feel like a general BDR is kind of turning into just a really good caller that kind of is integrated into all the other channels.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure. And I mean, cold email, I think is always going to work, right? But of course, it will probably get harder. And I think it's also like a hedge in a way for agencies, right? To use cold calling because this isn't something that an AI can replicate properly. And I'm pretty sure it won't ever be able to really do it, right? Having like a real human conversation, right? With like all of the nuances. So, I mean, even if this is like possible, but probably within the next 3 4 something years. So yeah, I think it's some type of a hedge to still deliver like outbound to clients in a yeah more secure and also like yeah more secure environment, I would say.
yeah, no, I agree. Email and most of these sequencing channels now that it's not that they've gotten easier, they've gotten easier to automate at scale just out of necessity, which has kind of turned them, I think, into more of a centralized kind of a function. So it's harder to operate at like an individual level. Whereas calling, you kind of, even if AI does develop, I feel like it's going to push it even more and more individual at a more of an individual level. Because even myself, I had to call the ROS in Ireland, which is like this, it's basically like this governmental body for like
Yeah,
taxes and stuff the last day. And it's an absolute pain in the ass because I need to send like 200 emails and I never get a reply. And I just want to call a human and just have a
yeah,
conversation with somebody. I feel like that's never going to go away. I feel like people just want to talk to somebody.
for sure.
Um, yeah.
For sure. I mean, there's
Did,
still this like lack in trust, right? If the AI is actually telling the truth, right? Because everyone that uses ChatGPT knows that at least at some point there has been like some mistake, right? And depending on what you're like looking for, especially when it comes to taxes, right? You want to be sure that there's like someone actually vouching for like what they said.
yeah, exactly. Um, okay, cool. And do you have any interesting insights on the calling space in general? Like I know you guys, you're not a calling company, but I presume you've probably used your own mobile data for your own outbound at some stage.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you said, right, we don't have like lots and lots of data on actual dialer data, right? Like we aren't like dialing to like a Nux or an Allroad. But yeah, I mean, one thing which is like a pretty beginner thing, I would say, which we also didn't do correct in the first place, right, is that we always use like a UK number, right? We were calling in the German market, whatever. So I think this is I think like a hurdle to overcome, right? But if you're able to get like a market specific number, right? This, especially as an agency, right, where you have different clients, which could be like somewhere in the US, somewhere in the UK. It's really like worth the investment and doing like workarounds to actually get the market specific number, right? So if you're calling in Germany, that you don't have like keep your UK number, but the German number, right?
Mm,
Because the pickup rates are like significantly increasing. We did like a little test on that, and it was like I think 45% higher pickup rates compared to using like a non-market specific number. So just like as a small thing, if someone plans to get started, right? I think this is definitely something to be considered.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I feel like that's advice that everyone has kind of heard before, but very few people even
Yeah,
ever actually listen to it, even though it makes such a big difference. Um,
it does. It does.
so yeah, I completely agree. So how did you guys actually from the beginning, even when you first started that first version of Better Contact, how did you guys go about growing it? Was it word of mouth? Was it connections? Was it outbound?
Yeah, I mean, great question, right? I mean, it's always like the like question which you like probably look at a bit different in hindsight, right? Because it was super scrappy, right? I mean, it was like some type of DMs, it was like a weird mix of like of everything, you know? But I mean, ultimately, what was like the overall concept, if you could give it a name, was like this inbound led outbound, right? This all bound, if you want to call it like that, really placing an emphasis on distribution in form of like content, and then using like, I mean, we didn't use Clay at the beginning, but some like custom built thing to like scrape the engagement and then reaching out via outbound, right? Because especially if you're a small team, you always need to find the highest leverage thing to do right now. You know what I mean? If I would still be cold calling to this day, right, just doing 150 dials a day, this wouldn't really bring us to the scale that we currently are, right? So there's always like this fine line to see how I would say unscalable it should be, which I think at the beginning, I think this is like common knowledge it should be, right? But I mean, what we really doubled down and are still doing is like this content component and then identifying who's the most, I would say, who has the highest propensity to actually use being like open to like trying out better contact and then reaching out with like we're having Clay, right, qualification, and then either like a call or email or like a LinkedIn DM. So yeah, I would say this is like the biggest impact that we've had here.
Okay, interesting. So walk me through that specifically. You would scrape engagement data, and then similar to what most kind of go-to-market engineers have built at some stage for a lot of companies. You'd scrape engage probably a lot more complicated back then though, because we didn't have Clay.
Yeah.
You'd scrape engagement data, filter them for the people that actually mattered, and then reach out to them via what channels? Was it primarily calling, or was there email, or were there other channels as well?
Yeah, so it was primarily calling at the very beginning, right? Because yeah, I mean, first of all, we didn't really have a lot of engagement and like people even paying attention to, right? So it wouldn't have made really sense to send emails, right? Because everyone knows that like the I mean, you probably know even way better that like to get one reply, you need to send out like X amount of emails, right? And we didn't even have enough people that like showed some type of interest to even get like one positive reply, statistically speaking, right? So it was like calling at the beginning, but now it's like more of a tiering, right? So each tier from 1 to 3 gets like a different type of attention, right? The first tier gets like the most, I would say, yeah, like time intensive multi-channel sequence, right? Which would be an email and then like a LinkedIn DM and then like a call if they don't yeah, engage. And then there's like tier 2, which gets like an email and then linked in the app, and then tier 3 only gets an email, right? And I mean, as we're like a PLG company, we don't want to like leave anyone untouched, right? Of course, if you like a sales-led motion, this would be quite a bad thing to do because you would get quite a lot of noise, right? But as people are able to like reach out to the product without any human intervention, it's like something we're still doing, right? So if you're like an agency, I wouldn't really replicate this like tier 3, tier 2 outreach, right? Because as an agency, you ultimately still have to take the demo, you have to talk to the people, right? So I would really like focus on this tier 1 and then also sprinkle in some calling because it's, I think, really big differentiator in the client acquisition as well. Because I think quite a lot of agencies don't do any cold calling to acquire their customers.
Okay, interesting. And then how has that marketing strategy or that growth strategy changed over the past few years to where we are now? Is it still more or less the same governing motion?
Yeah, so I mean, from the governing motion, it's still pretty much the same. Like the difference is that I started out creating this content back then, right? Really going heavy on the founder brand. I mean, probably everyone knows like Aiden Robertson, right? Especially what he did, of course, in a very much less sophisticated way back then. Um, but now it's like more shifting towards word of mouth, tracking specific people that when we know that they vouch for BetterContact, right? That they are like um, in a way, yeah, like giving us shout outs, right? And then tracking these people periodically, actually on a daily basis, checking who engaged with them, right? So basically shifting this tracking of only my profile to like a very large amount of operators in the space. So this is like how we were able to bring some scale in it.
Okay, cool. And then how have you seen your position in the company kind of change over time? Because I was speaking to Nick from Hayreach, and he was telling me all about how, like, at the very beginning, he was really like visionary, focusing on like just creating a really solid product that kind of aligned with what he had imagined. And now at this stage, he's kind of, there's a lot of things he's focusing on, but at the minute, one of the big things is kind of creating like a strong company culture. I was just wondering, like, what that progression has looked like for you at the very, very beginning. What did your role look like, and now as a co-founder, what does it look like?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, Nick is like in a sense different, right? That he's like built a pretty big team already, right? We don't see the need yet for that. So the like company culture aspect, of course, isn't that prominent. And now that mostly like culture between the co-founders and the few people that we work with. But yeah, so I mean, at the beginning, of course, you need to do everything yourself, building a website, right, and all of that. But now, for me, it's really stepping back and then thinking about the big bets that we can do, right? Because you really need to do when you're like a lean team and have like a some type of a PLG motion, low ticket, having these big bets, right? Big marketing bets. What we're doing is like cold calling competitions. We're doing like in-person events, right? We're like co-hosting events from time to time with Clay, for example. So these are like the things that I'm thinking and how to align this with the overall strategy. Because yeah, like really need to see how to bring the highest leverage with like the resources that we have, especially on the human resources side, right? Which is like very like limited. I mean, we're currently working with one contracted SDR on the sales side, right? On the product side, it's like
Hmm.
quite a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, it's basically me and like this SDR in like some function. So yeah, I have to see how to keep the growth up high, how to in a way always find like a new bet that I can go in 100%. And yeah, so it didn't change a lot, I would say, but more that that we're now able to like, of course, hire someone like an SEO agency, someone that is like, yeah, helping us with the website, all of that. But I don't think that like this company culture aspect is really that important right now.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Um, okay, interesting. And so you mentioned that the you want to take these big bets and these kind of these guerrilla marketing strategies,
Yeah, in a way.
if you yeah. Um, and then you also mentioned like tier one, tier two, tier three. Who is your tier one customer demographic at the minute?
Yeah,
Um,
so I mean, we actually started out very heavily with agencies, right? Because what we really like about agencies, they're like they know their thing, right? There isn't a lot of support needed. This is actually one aspect. Secondly, have high volumes, right? If you work with like a very high volume cold email agency or cold call agency, right? That's exactly what we were looking for, and they have very, I would say, strong connections in the SMB enterprise, right? I mean, they typically have SMBs enterprise as customers, right? So it's like an implementation channel. And it's actually still like our current like ICP, right? The agencies. We of course get more and more traction from like the enterprise side, but we don't actively are going there right now because yeah, it's like still a very, very strong channel for us. We also are building this type of community, right? Like very much similar to like what you're doing. I think it's quite complementary, right? Like most of the people that are like engaging with you are also very much yeah, people that we engage with that are like sharing knowledge, right? Because the spaces often very isolated. Everyone does their thing, right? Everyone does their like stuff. So it's very important to bring people together, and I think this is where like the real leverage is also, right? If you're like able to talk to like a very close knit community of operators, right? And then you're able to like come up with like new ways of doing things. So this is why we also do more and more first events. Like 2 weeks ago, we had one in Munich with Clay. It was like some type of roundtables, and people really appreciate this like roundtable nature, being able to talk about things. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. What were the main topics of those roundtables? What were you talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, funnily, it was like quite, I would say, centered around things like N Claude Code, and how to like combine all of these tools, right? These were actually topics that we didn't only come up with. It was like more of a question, what do you want to talk about, right? We asked around things. So they felt this like overwhelming, this being flooded with AI tools, right? But they don't know what to make out of it, right? And we've seen that like even like Clay is complementary with like a Claude Code, right? With like an MCP. So we're talking about how to like find the sweet spot between these tools, and how to like leverage them complementarily. And also things like where is the human still needed, right? Like these more controversial questions. What can we automate? And like pretty cool use cases, right? There was one guy who like installed like a very heavy cold calling function in his company, right? I think it was a pretty like close enterprise company, and he basically vibe coded like a cold calling tool, right? Like a dialer based on, I think it was I don't remember like the exact tool that he used, but yeah, it was pretty crazy to see, right? Because he was like very much not happy with what was on the market, right? So he basically went and vibe coded his own, as apparently working very well, like of course way more cost efficient. So yeah, I mean this was quite cool to see. But yeah, so it was basically these topics and just like some more like side things. But I'd say this was basically the bulk of it.
Okay, cool. How do you see the space changing? Like even internally, are you guys using Claude Code and all of these other AI tools more often? I'm speaking to
Yeah, so
a lot of SaaS founders nowadays, and a lot of the development now happens at the founder level, and then they just have the engineers kind of approving things. That not everyone, but a lot more often now.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So I mean, on the product side, we're like more and more using it on the UI side, right? So this is definitely something that's like way like more efficient, like a Claude Code there, or like also back-end improvements, or rather like analysis. To be honest, on the sales marketing side, this is also why I'm really like keen on having these events, right? It's not only about yeah, talking about what I think is working, but we actually like learn from these people, right? Because I'm very far from being AI fluent. I should probably like use way more, because what I currently do is like zero to none basically. So yeah, there is definitely like very big room for improvement on the AI side, to be honest, on the sales marketing side.
I mean, I feel like there's always room for improvement.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
always kind of one of those things where you could always do more. And even just thinking like that is inherently going to make you try and do more and waste time on things you probably shouldn't be wasting time on.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. So I mean, one thing which we are of course doing is like a qualification of inbound, right? This is like saving, of course, tremendous amount of times. But what I'm not currently doing is some type of yeah, open cloud that is managing my different things, or like interconnecting all of this stuff. I mean, I see definitely the advantage, right? I think it's like it's huge, but I also don't know if it's like at that level yet, where I would see like the productivity gains and the trust without having to fix things over and over, right? So yeah, I mean, it's probably like a pretty, I would say, yeah, perspective, which I cannot afford anymore in like 3 months or something. But yeah, let's see.
yeah, I feel like it's also for a growing company, a lot of these tools, when you have to build these rigid systems, I mean, you don't need to build rigid systems. You can build really flexible, dynamic ones. So there's a lot more building involved. Most people build these rigid systems and use cases for open Claude code. And for a growing company, if anything, that can kind of hold you back, I think, because you build something for one specific way of
Yeah,
working, and then in like 2 weeks' time, you're going to be working in a completely different manner. Now you're kind of
exactly.
locked into this one way, and you need to scrap all of this or try and work in this way to do something completely different.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, AI is, like from what I've seen, very strong in specific things, right? If you really prompt them a specific thing to do, and as you said, as soon as you don't need the specific thing anymore, or it changed in a way, you need to change the whole system, which of course is a pretty big um, time consumer again. So I currently don't see like the big add-on, but I really need to like do more of these roundtables, like talking to more people, especially also people in my situation, right? That's why I'm also very much grateful for this community to just like see what's actually out there, right? What's like proven to be working.
Yeah. Yeah. Don, I'm not sure if you're able to talk now, but I know you were building a lot of cool stuff in Claude Code. Maybe you're not available now. I remember at the start you said you couldn't talk. Or what about you, Manu? How are you? Are you building anything cool at the minute with Claude Code?
Uh, yeah, I am. I built a whole GTM system for myself where it goes. So I'm using both using Claw, but it's not open Claw. It's a smaller repo. It's called
Hmm.
Nano Claw, which is only 500 lines of code that you can instead of open Claw, which has like 500,000, and it
Okay.
scrapes all the
Big difference.
yeah, and it's more contained. So it scrapes all the data for me. It validates. Uh, like how my ICP, and then it will go and find the LinkedIn, create all the messages, and yeah, I just have to plug in. In the end, that's manual right now. Like how Roman was saying, it's okay to build them, but at the last minute, it is not there yet. So
Mm.
it is working 24/7. It keeps a tab of how many contacts, what is the price of the lead, uh, because all the API calls or what I'm scraping, all of this, and if someone replies uh, back or not, what is the cost involved in uh, yeah acquiring one first point of contact. And my first point of contact is basically a connection right now.
Okay, very cool. Very, very cool.
Nice.
Uh, yeah. One question I actually had for you, Roman, a completely kind of random one. I should have asked at the beginning of the conversation. Um, but how do I phrase this properly? Um, how good can phone data get in terms of coverage and quality? Is that something that you guys can get that much better at? Or have you kind of maxed it out? Do you just add more providers?
Yeah, great question. So I mean, if you look at like average or standard connect rates, right? So I mean, this is also something I didn't know what it meant before, right? So just to like give a quick definition, so connect rate basically means to how many people you actually get connected to when you call them, right? So even
Hmm.
if the phone number is valid, right, it does not mean, and it belongs to the right person, does not mean necessarily that you get connected, right? And it's typically somewhere around 5%, right? This is what you will see if you use like a like typical database. But yeah, so I mean, there's still 95% of like unconnected calls, right? And I mean, statistically speaking, it's not possible in a way that everyone picks up, right? But there is still a huge like gap to fill, right? So our goal is to get like yeah, consistently to 20% connect rates, right? We like probably across because it very much depends on the industry and also the geography, like maybe like 12, 15, 16, somewhere around there. But yeah, so the depth of validation is definitely something where the market is still quite young. It's definitely not as developed as the email space, right? So what's possible now, as compared to before, right? You can check if this number has been active, right? So there's activity score. You can check if the name actually matches to the LinkedIn profile, right? So you can do this based on carrier data and all of that, right? So it's quite advanced, right? It really helped us to step up the
It's really
game
cool. I
there,
didn't know that.
because it's like not like a black box anymore, right? Because what we previously had was like we were chaining different providers, and then we were asking customers, yeah, can you please tell us how it went? Can you please give us some dialer data maybe? So like an export, right? And people, I mean, understandably, they had different things to do. They maybe didn't give like the 100% correct answer, right? Because they, of course, um, don't always keep track of it like that. So yeah, I mean, now with the validation layers, we are able, by putting it just like with emails between every tool, we have like a better picture how good the mobile numbers are, right? And I mean, on average, we have like this qualifier around 20 to 35% of the phone numbers that we received from the providers, right? Because they're either a landline, they haven't been active within the last 3 months, they belong to the wrong person, right? Or actually, like the location is wrong, right? It isn't like a person in the US, you can do it actually quite accurately. It's not a person from Texas, but it's a person from Miami, right? So this is like something we can disqualify on the basis on. But of course, then the question is always how much can we trust the validation layer, especially considering opposed to email, there aren't that many validation layers, right? So it's quite a, yeah, I would say, not that saturated market, which in a way isn't that good for us. But yeah, I mean, considering that there is still a very big room for improvement on the email side, I wouldn't say that much. But on the phone side, 100%. And I think this is why more and more, like lots of people are like struggling with good data, right? With like good connect rates, because the math is super simple, right? If you are able to have like a 2%, 3% higher connect rate for your reps, right? And the more you have, of course, the more impact it has. It means if you have like 1,000 people that you call, right? And instead of being able to talk to like, let's say 5% connect rate, 50, like the 10% connect rate, 100, right? This means like 50 more connects with potential clients, right? Which is huge. And especially the higher the ACV, the higher your ticket size, the bigger the impact on your revenue, right? And it's really easy math. So there's definitely very big potential for like us to also improve that.
Yeah, okay, very, very cool. And how do you see yourselves improving that if if the validation layer is quite limited at the minute?
Yeah, it's a good point, right? So we are currently looking into like some yeah, proprietary stuff on the activity side, right? Because this is like the thing which is like the least developed from what we've seen, right? From all of these different verticals like name matching, geography matching. So this is one thing, and we actually are also beta testing more and more tools which don't have like a big, I would say, popularity, right? Because lots of people don't know them, but we of course keep hunting there and like also scouting these tools. So yeah, there have been promising results. So we probably will add a new one within the next 4 weeks. After like it has been going through like actual like live testing, actually calling the numbers. But yeah, so we are quite optimistic there. But of course, there are like some limitations on like our side as a aggregator primarily.
Okay, cool. And then so you
Roman,
guys, you go
sorry.
for it, minute, go for it.
No, I just wanted to ask Roman something. I'm looking at when you're saying GDPR compliant, you are as a company, BetterContact, they are are compliant for mobile data. But if I want to reach as a customer, I have to have my own compliance, or can I just say that I sourced it from you, so I'm GDPR compliant? You know,
Yeah,
like when you're calling someone, you have to delete their data after 1 month.
that's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's often like very much misunderstood, right? So there is two sides of GDPR compliance. It's like the data provider side, right? It's for us about having providers aggregated that source it from like yeah, I would say compliant like places, right? And I mean also processing the data compliantly. But on the user side, right, which like would be you in that case, is
Yeah.
you of course also need to follow the GDPR guidelines, right? Which especially there, like the primary point is the legitimate interest, right? That you don't spam a person, that you actually have a legitimate business interest. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, so of course, if you have this number from us, but they say I don't want to have my number stored, then I would always like say I have the number from there. They have a like according to GDPR, like a opt-out form, right? And then you can say the name of the provider, and then they have it on their website. They put their like their name in, and then they're being blacklisted. So this is at least how we do it, because it's something that's needed to be compliant, right? But this is how I would go about it, right? I wouldn't like stress, just say, yeah, this is like the provider. If it's like the concern, I don't want to have my number distributed.
Yeah, okay. So I have to have a separate database and I have to manage it myself. And then suppose someone says to me, and I don't know if now, maybe I want to contact them after 3 months. Can I still
Yeah.
use the database and don't have to pay extra, or how does that work? I know sometimes
Yeah.
people say, and I'm just trying my luck, maybe after a couple of months they change their
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, if you ask if you can re-enrich a number, right? So we basically have like some type of like storage allowance, right, from the GDPR side that we can store up to 60 days, right? So I would recommend you, especially to build like if you want that your proprietary data asset, which as an agency I think is quite good to like recycle leads for other clients, right? If there are like market overlaps, then yeah, I would definitely keep it there. But do you use like a dialer, like a specific one?
So I've never tried
Okay.
mobile myself because always the credits are always 10 times more expensive.
Yeah.
And also for GDPR reasons, if you're contacting, you have to keep more
Yeah.
um, data. Like you have to ask them how you got your data. You have to tell all of these things. Uh, like there's so many different layers of,
Yeah.
especially in Europe. So I've never tried it, but that's why I'm asking you, what is the best way to
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah, for sure. So every dialer should have, and typically also has, some type of status, right? So you should be able, after each call, if there's like someone saying, "Don't reach out to me ever again," that you flag it, right? So you basically will have your own database inside your dialer, right? So you will be able, if you for some reason want to call this person again, and if you forgot there was this like GDPR complaint, that it will be blacklisted within your dialer, right? So I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're saying I found like a dialer now, that you also stick to it, then it shouldn't be an issue, to be honest.
Okay. And can I ask you also, why is always mobile data so expensive? Is it just it's very expensive for you to acquire than email from different providers?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
So
always seen 10 times the price.
yeah, good question. And I mean, we're also like just reacting to the market, right? We are an aggregator. We can, of course, only buy from at the rates that the providers give us. So yeah, I would say it's more like the sourcing side, right? Because also like email finders are more on the algorithm side, whereas on the phone side, it's really like some in like especially if you want to do it compliantly, a very tedious process. So it's more like yeah, um, a way of charging for this like work, right? And also, what is like a pretty important point, like emails have a way like yeah, way less long validity period, right? So the data decay in emails is like if we talk about work emails, right? It's like way higher. After 2 years, people typically switch or even like less time. And in mobile number typically says, right? Like I have my phone number for like 15 years now. Like I had the first like phone number and it just stayed. So as soon as you have it, you have it. But an email, it basically as soon as the person leaves the company, and you don't know when the person leaves, right? So there's also some uncertainty around if you don't keep scraping every day, like some sources, then yeah. So I would say it's like the value of number and longevity it has.
Okay. Final question. The email, the phone numbers, can you use them for calling and also for WhatsApp or Viber or any of the other VoIP, or it's only for dialing?
So you mean like from a compliance side, or if it's the
Yeah,
number
from the
that you...
compliance side.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, WhatsApp outreach, I honestly haven't explored it. I know that customers are more and more doing it, interestingly. Um, but yeah, so I haven't heard of any complaints, right? I know some people that are doing it at scale, but I haven't heard of any complaints, right? But I can of course imagine that it's like a more not typical way, and people might be caught more off guard. But I would just try, to be honest,
Okay.
because it's
Yeah.
very
Okay.
interesting, like as a channel. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
sure thing.
Okay. It's nearly the full hour now, so I think unless you have anything you want to ask us, I think I'll let you go. I'm sure you're a very busy guy. Wednesday's the busiest day of the week normally.
Yeah, so I mean, one like final word, if I may. So what really also helped us, I didn't mention at the beginning, is like it's a very simple concept, right? But very powerful. It's like this untouched lead concept, right? So if you think about it, all of these providers, all of these databases, they often have a very like similar approach of acquiring data, right? Which is like on the email side, on the phone side. So there is like a very much untouched segment of leads in this market, right? To this day, which is typically like this 15-20% of your TAM, because everyone is like using the same tools, right? Like basically 99% are using Apollo, Zoom Info, right? So I would really invest some time and like resources to identify your TAM, right? And then if your email tool says I only found 70% or 60% of valid emails, ask yourself what happens to the other 40, right? My competitor most likely is not going to do anything with it. So probably am I also not going to do anything with it, right? But if there is any way, right, some custom scraping, right? We're focused with BetterContact on untouched leads, right? We like also aggregate more uncommon data sources, right? To actually find these emails numbers, right? Then I'd really like invest some time there, right? Or as mentioned, if you can do it for like custom scraping using like a clay gen or something, because the idea is pretty simple, right? If there's people that don't have this like inherent blockage or rather like resistance towards cold calling, they also aren't as a consequence very much like aware of what's out there, right? Because if they don't get spammed by emails, phone calls, it's most likely, and from what we've seen, they're easier to close, right? So it's definitely something worth focusing on also.
They haven't been exposed to us degenerate spammers.
Exactly, exactly. So it's like still untouched. They're of course happy about maybe, but of course, how I was thinking about cold calling, cold emailing, that it's like a connection of a seller and a buyer, right? And the buyer ultimately has a need, right? If you're able to like properly identify that, and they're happy that you reach out because they have a problem and you help them with that, right? So from a mindset side, I wouldn't really see myself as a degenerate spammer. There's
Yeah,
something
of course.
to offer that's good, you know? So yeah,
Yeah, no, I think especially in Europe as well, I mean, it's true everywhere. All of these clay workflows, every good campaign always comes back down to that. It's clearly demonstrating how you can help a person who actually needs what it is that you sell.
exactly.
But especially in Europe, because if I'm being completely honest, this is never something I ever did with clients, but I'm realizing now that I should have. Was for every campaign you have what I think it's called an LIA, a legitimate interest agreement, that
Mhm.
if somebody asks, you're obliged to then send it to them, essentially telling them why you consider them valid for this campaign. Um, and it's especially important even for that. If you're reaching out to somebody and they genuinely don't have any need for what you're selling, well, then you're going to be in a bit of a tricky situation. The likelihood that they'll ask for that and that you'll then be pursued if you don't send it is very low,
Yeah,
but it's still worth acknowledging.
exactly.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway,
Probably not too hard to come up with when you're like
yeah,
doing some AI
it's not hard at
application
all.
of that. Exactly. So yeah, definitely worth it.
Okay, cool. I'll let you go, Roman. It was fantastic having you on, and we
Perfect.
need to catch up some
Thanks a
other
lot,
time
man.
again as well.
We need to catch up soon again. Thanks a lot for like hosting this, and I mean, thanks a lot, Manu, when done to to pull up.
Thanks a lot,
Well,
guys.
thank you. Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you. Bye.